Well, here we are again with Judy Wagoner, my mother, and this is interview number 4. And today we're gonna cover, at least start by covering high school.
Okay, I started high school in 1956, and I went to Bridgeport Township High School. Big old brick, about 3-story tall, or 4, brick building in Bridgeport, Illinois. And it's the same school my mother attended, and my uncle, and most of the other people around there. And it was there for years and years, a very old school. It was recently torn down, say within the last 10 years, and a new one built, which is really nice, but we were all hated to see the other one go. It was the school that I told you had 2 gymnasiums, a girls' gym and then a boys' gym with a big gym. And had a big, there's a name for it. The hallway, there was a hallway upstairs that went along the side of the building, inside of course, and it was all glassed in, like a terrarium, or I don't know if that's the proper word, but in fact it used to be used that my mother said when she was going to school there, they did have plants and everything. They never did when I was there, but it was really pretty there. And it had that, and we had just the usual nice big cafeteria, and right off the girls' gym. The girls' gym was right in the middle of the school, and then the cafeteria was right beside that. And then the big gym, the main gym, which is a huge auditorium gym, and all of the seating was on an upper level. They could put bleachers down below if they wanted, but it was a nice big area. Other than that, it was kind of an old-looking school, and big rooms, tall ceilings, and things like that. And I rode the bus to school. My bus driver in high school was Jim Fox, was his name for a few years, and then Ruth Wagoner took over the. Marvin bought a bunch of buses. He was the Darwin's brother. He was the maintenance man for the buses at that school. He worked on them and took care of them. And so he invested in some buses, and he owned some buses of his own too. And Ruth drove buses for a while, and he did too, of course. And then of course they hired other drivers too. And so, and every morning, every day, it was, getting on the bus, and I'd ride the bus home. Did that all 4 years. My last year, I did have a car to drive, a little Hudson Jet that Daddy had. He used it for a work car for a while, and then let me have it. It's the one that the lights would go out halfway home when I was driving it at night, and I'd have to drive home in the dark. And
Sounds safe.
yeah, thank goodness it was a country road. But and it was the one that could outrace Darwin's. He had a Ford, some kind of a little car, and I could always beat him in a car race with my little Hudson Jet. And my grandparents had a Hudson Jet, a little one like that. Theirs was pretty. It was a kind of an aqua color. Mine was brown and tan. And anyway, I did drive it mainly in the evening. I drove it. I didn't drive it much to school. They didn't want me to drive it to school because of parking it down there in the daytime. But I'd drive it in the evening, or if I had to go to band practice or something like that. And then, it was a cute little old car. They were little, small cars. One semester, I think it was probably the second semester of my freshman year, they doubled up on a bus route. They had several buses that traveled that area, had a large, that school had a large area that it covered, and some were south. There was a pretty good sized bunch of kids from the south part of that area that came to Bridgeport High School. And then there were a bunch of us from the north part of the area, which included Petrolia and Chansey and a lot of other areas in there. And they had to double up the route, and this one semester we were picked up at 6:30 in the morning, and it was always dark, you know, up there in the wintertime in Illinois at 6:30 in the morning, and so that was kind of fun in a way. And then what was nice about it though, we were first on and then we were first off in the evening, so I got home earlier. And I enjoyed my classes. I always did like school. I liked the socialization of all of it more than anything. I was always disappointed if I had to miss school for any reason, like if I was sick or something. And I don't know what I studied the freshman year. I know I had Latin a couple of years, and I had, of course, the typical English and math and science and all of that stuff. And I always enjoyed PE, and I joined Girls Athletic Association there, and I progressed up in that to be in charge of it my junior and senior year. But anyway, that was always fun, and we didn't have competition sports for the girls like they did the boys, but we did a few times. We would invite another school in for like a play day, other GAA groups. Girls Athletic Association was what it was called, and I always enjoyed that. And my favorite was deck tennis. I used to love to play that.
Same as ping pong?
No,
Different?
it's played like well, I guess maybe like volleyball.
Oh,
It's with a big net, and it's a rubber ring, and you tossed it. You could once you had to use one hand to do it, and threw it across the net, and then on the other side somebody catches it in the same hand. They had to throw it back, and it was like that. And
never heard of that.
yeah, it was. I always liked it. It was fun, and but I always liked, you know, PE, and we danced. Usually had a time during the year that we square dance and do dancing, and then I think I told you about this before. At lunchtime, we always had an hour off for lunch, and I always ate in the cafeteria, and then we would go into the girls' gym, which was right there by the cafeteria, as I said. And we would have time when we could, there were bleachers sitting down on the floor so the kids could sit there and talk and visit. And it was just a fun time for the last half hour of the whole time or more. And they had a record player, and they would play records, and we would all dance. Dancing was what was the name of that TV show? Where all the kids danced on it, and
Dick Clark.
Well, yeah, he started it, yeah.
American Bandstand.
Yeah. And anyway, we always enjoyed that. And there was a big stage right there right beside that in that gym, and the plays were given there, and the band concerts. Some of them were. Most of the band concerts were done at the big gym, and so. It was nice, and the girls' locker room was right in that area, and all the boys' stuff was in the big gym, and it was a newer gym. The girls' gym was an old gym. That's where Mother participated in sports in that gym when she was in high school, and then right above that area on the next floor up was a great big study hall, and it was a big study hall and a big library combined, and I always liked that because I was always reading books, and the study hall was nice. We were assigned a study hall time, so we had one period a day where we had study hall, and there was a stage in there, and or a raised area, and the teacher's desk was always up on that area, and but I always liked that. I always enjoyed using that time to when I needed to use it, or I could always read. And then and again, they had big windows everywhere. And I was in band in elementary school, And then when I went to high school, I stayed in band, and I stayed in percussion because I had taken piano lessons for years, so I didn't need to learn to read music, and I didn't need to necessarily, Mother and Dad didn't want to have to buy an instrument or rent an instrument. And so I went into percussion. Of course, I loved that. That was fun, and it was, and I excelled in it. I got along fine in it. And then we always had a pretty good band, a nice chorus. I was in both of those every year I was in high school. And my freshman year, I was elected by, each class elected a homecoming queen candidate, which wasn't fair because who would win? The senior, of course. But anyway, that's the way they had always done it, and I don't know, I'm sure they don't do that now. But anyway, I was elected by my freshman class to be their representative, and Mother took my pink fancy lace dress. It was a ball gown that I wore for the 8th grade dance the year before, and made it into a strapless gown. It was really pretty. You got it. Derek plays with it every now and then. And we rode around. We had outside the big gym was the football field, and we had a nice big football field. And now we didn't have a stadium per se, but we had bleachers out there on both sides. And then of course they had a track right around the area. And so at homecoming time, the candidates would. There were several people, who brought their convertibles, and we'd sit up on each one of us was in a car, and we'd parade around. It was really exciting. I was thrilled to death to do something like that. I never dreamed that I'd ever be elected to something like that. And then we always had a Christmas dance at school, and we had band competition. We always went to competition, and we didn't chorus. What they didn't compete in chorus back then. No, band did, but not the chorus. But I was always in both. When every year for the homecoming dance, of course that year I was in a formal and part of it, but every other year I was always there. No, for prom, I mean. For prom, I was always there every year, all 4 years, even though it was a junior-senior prom, because of singing in we had a girls' octet group, and we sang. And so we would always be singing with a microphone, and the spotlight would watch the candidates as they walked in,
Did you sing soprano?
Yes,
Yeah.
always did. And Linda was, I think Linda was a candidate when she was in high school for prom. I don't know about Gloria. And that was always fun. And of course we had our prom in the gym, the big gym. And that was always fun because we decorate, for it. And we usually got along real well. My senior year, we had a problem with the home ec teacher was our, that year, I think she was home ec teacher. That year was one of our sponsors, and she didn't want us to have balloons. And so,
Wonder why?
I don't know. I suppose they thought we'd pop them or something, who knows. But anyway, the committee, I was on that committee to decorate. One of the girls was very vocal about that. She thought we should have balloons. So she went ahead and popped. They went ahead and got balloons and decorated with balloons, and we all got in trouble. That's the only time I was ever pulled into the office. And I was called one by one. We were called to the office. And our principal at that time was Mr. How could I forget his name? Have you ever seen Perry Mason on TV? He looked just like Perry Mason. He had that same stern look in his face. Everybody was scared to death of him. And he was probably a really good principal. But Anyway, he scared me to death, so I was afraid I'd get kicked out of school or something, but I didn't really, it wasn't my idea, I was. So anyway, but that was my senior year. And then in freshman year, it was just kind of a typical year of school, riding the bus and going to school and studying, taking tests, and having fun. I enjoyed it. And then my sophomore year, same thing. And that year I had geometry, and Mrs. Kirk, there you go, was my geometry teacher. She was an older teacher, been there for years, and she was so sweet and a good teacher. And but that's the year. At the end of that year, at the end of my sophomore year, I met Darwin. I met him in chemistry class, I think. And of course, alphabetical seating, we always sat next to each other, you know.
That's where Tom and I met too.
Was it? And so anyway, that's where I met Darwin, and kind of liked him a little bit, but didn't become a girlfriend to him or anything then. Because he was always cute. Everybody, all the girls liked him. And Mrs. Kirk thought we were cute too. She, I don't know what she said to us, but she would always kind of, she thought we made a cute couple. And even because we sat near each other, you know. And life was so simple then, you know. And we had a few boys that were ornery, usually the football players. I always got along with them. They were nice kids. I went to grade school with most of them, and high school, and I studied. That year, I took. Of course, I had the usual English and math and science, and I had. In science, I took, I don't know what it was called, but we had to study all the bones in the body.
Like anatomy?
Like
anatomy or biology?
Well, it's biology, I think. It, you know, and that was fun. I always enjoyed that. And we had a skeleton in the room, in the science lab, you know, so we had to learn all that science, that skeleton was. And then we had to cut up a big worm that year, and then it was the typical, you know, Christmas dance and football games and band practices and marching in the band. We had a lot of. We'd start in the summertime, like I think they do down here. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Having marching practice, you know, band practice on the field, and we did that, and we always put on quite a nice show, and it was cold too. Later in the season, you know, we'd start out, it wasn't so bad, but it was hard to play the snare drum with gloves on, and Darwin, he played football, I think his freshman year, and after that he didn't. He got more involved in agriculture, and was active in FFA, and he really enjoyed that, and he had some good friends. It was a big group of boys at that time. They didn't let girls do it then. And I remember we wanted to take art. This probably was our sophomore year. And a bunch of us girls liked to draw. And we wanted to take an art class, and we didn't have an art teacher. We had one in grade school. She was really good. I mean, we did everything. We had a kiln, and we did all kinds of stuff, and all kinds of artistic things. Well, we didn't have any. Well, the only art that was available was drafting in the industrial arts end of it. They taught industrial arts back then. And we tried our best to get the school to allow girls to go to industrial arts, and they wouldn't do it. We wanted that so bad because we wanted to do the art. We wanted to make things and do that. And the only other thing they did have all 4 years that I was there was home economics. A lot of the girls were in home ec, and that would have probably been a good thing, except I wasn't interested. I was always involved. Mother taught me a lot, but also every summer I spent the whole summer in 4-H, and so I got that then. And so I just didn't, I was involved in band and chorus and girls athletics and everything else, so I didn't have time for home ec. But a lot of the girls did. So anyway, we lost our hope to become in the industrial arts program. And then I tried out for plays when I was in school. I was always involved in singing. I sang a lot of solos, and I was always involved in singing with the chorus and stuff like that, but I could never act. Every time I'd try out, they never thought I could ever do it. And so I finally just gave that up about my junior year. But I always wanted to be in some of the plays. We always had, every year, every class had a play that we put on, and they put it on at night for their parents, and for the people who would come. And that was that stage in the old gym was always where they did that. Sophomore year. So then junior year, Darwin and I got together about the beginning of junior year. We were boyfriend, girlfriend. And by that time, everybody was pairing up. Linda and Tom Heath were boyfriend and girlfriend, and I don't know who else was. And we were all, the four of us, we never did date by ourselves. We always went on a double date, I think, everywhere we went. Linda and Roger. Roger didn't, he was from Lawrenceville, and so he went to school over there. But he and Darwin were good friends, and we always double dated. And by that time, in the junior year, those guys were driving. Darwin always raised pigs, and his dad had a farm. It didn't amount to much, but he had a big barn, and he has cows and chickens and ducks and stuff like that. And Darwin raised pigs, and there's a lot of money in pigs. And he always had a lot of money, and he always had nice cars. So, and then of course Dick Schofield, who had been he had tried to be my boyfriend from the 5th grade, I think. I've been seeing his name on Facebook every now and then. There's a group from Illinois that's on there, and I like to read that and find out what's going on up there. And every now and then he puts something in there. But anyway, I liked Dick. He was always fun. Dick and I were more like a brother and sister in a way, because there was a big bunch of us that were always together in band. And he was a good trumpet player. And we would go to ride the band bus to go to the away games and just have a ball. We act so silly, and just have fun. And but I was never his girlfriend until later in high school. He dated me. He asked me to date him a few times. And then I don't know. It's pretty much, hi honey. What are you doing? Are you gonna help? Other than running around with Lynn and Roger and a bunch of us girls, there were a bunch of us that were girlfriends, and not the kind of girlfriend that Derica talks about today. We were just girls, and we'd have slumber parties and go to each other's houses and go to parties. We always had parties, even with our boyfriends. Our parents would let us have parties, and we'd go to different houses. Excuse me. And then We started going to movies more, and went to music competition. I always took a drum solo and played in a drum quartet or whatever, and we always won. And because we had a good band. And always went to all the football games and the basketball games and a lot of the away games if they weren't too far away. And we always rode the players' buses if we wanted to. Not the players' bus, excuse me. The cheerleaders rode the player. Oh, my freshman year, I forgot to tell you. My freshman year, I was a junior varsity cheerleader, and we wore our outfits that we had in grade school, because 3 of us were had been cheerleaders in grade school, and we wore, it was a navy blue skirt, but a short skirt, and it was lined in white satin. It had navy blue tights and a heavy sweater with a big letter B on the front of it, a white sweater. And so we wore that our freshman year. And then after that, I didn't participate. I wanted to go ahead and try out to be a varsity cheerleader, but Mother wouldn't let me. She, I knew all the girls that were on the varsity cheerleading squad, but she thought some of them didn't have a very good reputation, and I think she was right. So she wouldn't let me go out for that. So I was just in band after that. And of course, then the junior prom. Well, in my freshman year, I don't know if I had a date for the prom that year. I didn't. My freshman year, I attended the prom because I had to sing. And in my sophomore year, I still had to sing, but I went that year with Larry Gillum, and I had a yellow prom dress. And then my junior year, I went with Darwin, and I wore that I don't know what I wore for that year. Can't remember. Anyway, they were always pretty prom dresses. And and then we always had, for the plays, I mentioned the plays, they would always have a class play, and they lots of times would have our octet, our girls group to sing with it. And one year we, the play was a hillbilly play of some sort. It was a funny play. And so we decided that we would dress up as hillbillies. I even got some stuff to blacken in some of our teeth and borrowed old overalls and stuff like that. And I don't know what we sang, some kind of a hillbilly song, and put on that show. And of course, we acted silly, and we were the hit of the whole evening. They liked us better than they did the play. At least that's what the people said. And it was fun. We had fun doing that. And that was the junior year, I guess. Went to the junior prom. I went to the junior prom with Darwin. And of course that was special. And we double dated with Linda and Roger, of course. And we decorate, like I told you, we decorated that gym beautifully. We would string crepe paper or this hanging stuff all across the whole area of the gym so that the gym was surrounded, it was surrounded by elevated seating for people who wanted to sit up there and watch the games. And then there was a fencing area all around that to keep people from falling off of it,
Was it bleachers?
Yeah, and yes, it was. I think there were some were regular seats, and there was bleachers too, and that went way up. And they could always put these roll down bleachers down below if they wanted a real big crowd. But anyway, and that junior year, maybe that was even the sophomore year too, Darwin, the FFA group, always got involved in selling the concessions. Even when he taught school, he taught agriculture, and his FFA group did the same thing there. And they were in charge of the concession stand, and our concession stand was under those elevated bleachers at one end of the gym. And that's where Darwin spent a lot of his time during a ball game. And then,
Did you have a theme for your junior prom?
oh yeah, but I don't remember what they were. Every year was a theme of some sort. But the tables, we decorated the tables, and we had a walkway built in, you know, and a lot of colorful paper and stuff like that around. And we did a good job on that. We had a lot of fun decorating for it. And then the senior year, of course, Darwin and I then were an item. We were us. It was not me. It was Judy and Darwin. And I think my junior year maybe. One semester in our junior year, our band teacher needed another drum player. It was just one of the what do they call those drums?
Snare?
Not a snare drum, but
Bass.
it was worn like a snare drum when you march, but had a padded things, and they beat on it differently, and didn't really take much training to do that. And so my band teacher asked me, said, "Do you think Darwin would do that for us?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I would ask him," and he did. For that semester, he played that. I've forgotten what the name of those drums are. How could I forget that? He played that with the band, and then of course after marching season, then they didn't need those drums,
In junior year?
What?
That was in junior year?
No, well, yeah, it would have been junior
When he
year.
played, yeah.
Yeah. And then the senior year, everything was the same. We sang just like we always did, the girls group. And I played piano with another girl. We played a piano duets, two pianos, for baccalaureate, and played the march and pomp and circumstance and all that stuff for baccalaureate. And that was quite a big deal. I was thrilled to death. I got a really nice, Mother made me the prettiest beige lacy dress for that. And somewhere I've got a picture of me playing that piano in one of the yearbooks. But anyway.
And did you take piano lessons all those years?
Yeah, I had piano lessons from the time I was in probably 7th or 8th grade to probably about the time I was a senior. And I quit I guess I probably quit then. And I played for church a lot. For years, I played downstairs in the basement of the church building for the kids' Sunday school, kids' church. Played for that, and then they had me playing for the church services most of the time. There were always 2 or 3 women in the congregation that could play too,
Mama could play, right?
Yeah, she could. She didn't do it too often. She could play. She was good. She did fine, and. But they had me play quite a bit. I sang a lot at church too, all those years. I sang even when I was a little kid at church, kind of like Derica, And then nice big Christmas dance and a big went to competition and did well in music, and went to all the ball games and GAA. We had a big GAA meet at our school that last year, and just a one-day thing, and schools from the different areas came, and we organized it and had it. That was a big job for me because I was in charge of the GAA group, and it was fun though. I really enjoyed it, and although it was a headache, but. And I'm trying to think what else went on. same old thing, pretty much all 4 years in high school. And pretty much the same group of friends. We still continue with our slumber parties and having our parties sometimes and things like that. Hay rides. And then our church youth group was, the church I went to was a country church, and it was on what they called a circuit. It was a Methodist church. Methodists were known for that. And there was our church in Union Chapel and Pleasant Hill Church, and there was another one somewhere. I don't know what it was, but anyway, and so we had a youth group of probably 20 or 30 kids, and that was fun. And I got to know a lot of those kids from that went to Sumner to school, you know, and places like that. Sumner was close. Lawrenceville was close. Lawrenceville was the biggest high school in the area, and then Sumner was the littlest. And and of course, and then all these different country schools around, plus the elementary schools in the towns. And so at Christmas, that Christmas, Darwin and I were really pretty serious. And that Christmas, Darwin gave me my cedar chest. Mother had a fit. She thought I wasn't going to get married.
Was that a sign of, like a promise sign?
Well, he didn't indicate that it was, but it makes sense, you know, in a way. It was pretty. He picked that out and got it. And of course, we always had class rings. We always got our class rings. Every junior year, we'd get class rings. And then and I think at Christmas that year, Darwin gave me, I want to say we got engaged at Christmas, but I don't think that's right.
I mean, you went to college separately.
Well,
for your
for a
first
little
year.
bit. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think we got engaged maybe at graduation. He gave me a ring, I think. I didn't have it when I was in school. And then had our high school graduation. We had gray caps and gowns, and we had it, of course, inside in the big gymnasium, and processed in with the band playing. And each year, the band I was in, the band that played for everything, and you know, the band always played for all the situations that went on at school, and we processed in and had baccalaureate, and it was fun to go to all that. It was exciting, and it's exciting for my mom and dad too, you know.
How many people do you think graduated with you?
I don't know, I'd have to think. I mean, it was a small school. Maybe 100 and some, you know, probably, maybe close to 100. Maybe 80 to 100, I don't know. I'd have to look. And so, and then we used to have the Frosted Mug, which was a little drive-in restaurant thing in that town, and that's where the kids would go and hang around there.
Like a sock hop?
Well, no, we most of the time didn't even go in. I think you could have gone in, but we'd sit in the cars and visit, and they'd drive around and around and around, you know. And then Lawrenceville had a Dairy Queen, so we lots of times we'd go over there and drive around and around and around, and then Lawrenceville was and still is set up as an old-fashioned town with a big courthouse in the middle. A big old courthouse is still there. It's a beautiful building, and then with stores all around that area, and we drive through there, and there was between Lawrenceville and Bridgeport there was a drive-in theater, and that's where we always would go to the drive-ins there. And one time Roger and Linda and Darwin and I were going, and we decided for the fun of it, they were gonna try to see if we could sneak in. And so they put Linda and I in the trunk of the car, and of course we had to giggle, you know. But they put us in the trunk of the car, drove in, and got us in. We never paid. Then we got out in there when we were there. But we spent a lot of time at that drive-in theater. And you know, I think it's still there. I may be wrong. It was there for a lot of years anyway. But I don't think it's not used, so it's probably been torn down. And
Some of them came back during the pandemic.
yeah, I noticed that. Yeah. And there was a pizza place, Bob's Pizza. You met one of Bob's boys when you were a kid.
Dated him.
And
Dated him briefly.
yeah. In fact, there was a picture of him on Facebook not very long ago. They had some kind of a big special going on or something.
When?
And it's still they have several Bob's pizza places in Vincennes, and they're originally from Vincennes, I think, and Lawrenceville, and they. But I wanted you to see that, and then I could never find it again. But of course, the young people are running it now. The younger Bobs. That's probably the third generation of Bobs. And then, let's see. And then, not long after, when I graduated from high school, and every summer I'd go to church camp. Every summer at Lake Bloomington, of all places. Linda or Doris, you've been to Lake Bloomington up there. Well, we had a church camp up there. And
Was it the same one that we went to with First Presbyterian?
I don't know.
Probably was.
It might have been, yeah. And I didn't know you went to one. And that was always fun. I'm not very many of the kids that I went to high school with went, but there were several kids from Sumner that would go. There was a nice big Methodist church there in Sumner, and then our church group, our youth group, some of them would go. And I always had a good girlfriend, Jeannie Pye, that I knew ever since we were children. Because we went to church together, and our mothers had grown up together and gone to elementary school and high school, you know. And I knew her grandparents, and she knew mine. And but she was never active, and Linda Irwin wasn't either. They were never active in extracurricular activities. Linda's parents wouldn't let her, and Jeannie was always rather shy. And she was more of a kind of a little homebodies, little mother's girl, really. And I just loved her parents and her brother and her family, and so she didn't participate much either. And so my girlfriends were basically the ones that I met when I went into town to elementary school. And then even though we all went to high school together. And then I graduated from high school. That was a wonderful occasion. I was so thrilled to get to be through high school, you know. And then probably not more than 2 or 3 weeks later, I was at Southern Illinois University because I had enrolled in summer school down there. And I was taking classes that summer semester at the Vocational Technical Institute because I wanted by the way, when I was in my junior and senior year in high school, I was very active and proficient in business courses, and took journalism and took typing and shorthand, and I just loved it. I loved shorthand and typed fast, and so I wanted to go into business when I graduated from high school, and I wanted to be a court reporter. So I enrolled at VTI, Vocational Technical Institute, at Carbondale campus. Now it was about 10 miles out of Carbondale, and of course each day then, well, let me backtrack a little. So Mother and Dad rented a room for me at Maud Carzine's home, which was a great big 2-story home, right on the main street there and heading up toward campus. Hilly, it was pretty, great big, on the corner, I think, a great big house, and there were 18 of us girls, and that was a good experience for me. The first summer session, I lived in upstairs in a room, which had been a sunroom back in the day of the house, and there were 4 girls in that room, and I was there that semester, and then I stayed there, of course, or I went home, you know. Darwin and I he had a car, and freshmen couldn't have cars on campus at that time, but if you were working, they'd let you, and so he always had a car, and he'd drive us, and we usually had 2 or 3 boys with us. I don't think we ever had any girls with us. None of the girls went to school down there, but and then we'd go back and forth on weekends. And so
Before you do too much more with college, tell me about your childhood church. Anything that you haven't talked about?
Well, my college. Let me say this quick because
Okay.
it didn't last long.
Yeah.
I took my freshman year of college, and I dropped out. I was unhappy with VTI. I didn't like the way they worked with me. And plus, then they showed me that one of my teachers showed me a whole closet full of the court reporting machines. Didn't have one person that could teach me. And so, you know, I thought, well, shoot. And what I was doing, taking, you know, bookkeeping and typing and shorthand and all that stuff like I did in high school. And so I transferred in on campus into business. And I don't remember now what, I was stuck taking freshman courses, so I didn't know, you know, I didn't pay much attention to that. And I went in there and the whole time, even though I went to school out at VTI, which was away from the main campus, it was a big campus. There were a lot of students there because it was the vocational end of it. David Smith went there, and so did Kurt, and I don't know who all. But anyway, and I'd ride the bus out from campus. I'd walk to the campus, get to the bus, and then ride out to VTI and take classes and then ride home. They had a cafeteria out there and everything. That's kind of nice. I kind of liked it in a way. And in the evening, and lots of times the girls, we'd go to the movies or we'd just play typical, you know, college stuff. And go to the ball games. We'd always go to the football games. Football was a big deal, and we had a huge stadium. And the nicest thing that I'll never forget, I was so impressed the first time I saw it. In the football games, you know, they always had the national anthem, and they would lower all of the lights around the football field and put a big spotlight on the flag and play that national anthem, and it was just made your, you know, cold chills. It was really impressive, I thought. And they always had Southern always had a real good band, and a good pep band, and a good fun marching band and all that. I wasn't part of that. I did take a chorus class a few times, and sang in a couple of concerts. And then my second year, I was married. Darwin and I got married at the end of the first semester, first year. And so Darwin and I rented an upstairs apartment in a little old house, not about 2 or 3 blocks from campus. And it was nice. We had a great big, it was upstairs with an outdoor stairway going up, and a great big porch up there, covered and screened in. And then we had our everything was old fashioned and old, and our furniture, Darwin's uncle and aunt, you know, his uncle and aunt never did give us hardly anything. They, you know, but they asked, they said, we've got some living room furniture and stuff if you'd like to borrow it. And so we did. It was kind of beat up and uncomfortable, but we lived with that for, you know, that time we were there. And
Before you do too much with college, you might want to cover your church.
pardon?
Before you do too much with college, you might want to cover growing
Well,
up.
I was just going. What I was going to do, I was going to finish up because I dropped out of school.
Oh, okay.
My
I see.
sophomore year, I never.
Okay.
I started. I think I went a ways,
Okay.
and I got a job. I was working. Actually, no. This was during my freshman year. I dropped out, and I started working full time as a secretary in the Department of Anthropology. And we were in an old home they used back then, and then they built a new home ec building on campus, great big fancy building, and the Department of Anthropology moved into the basement of the home ec building there, and so that's where I worked there, and so that's how we spent the rest of the year. And we made some, and then we did before much time, we did move. Daddy and Mother bought us an old mobile home that they had cleaned up and fixed up for us and painted and fixed it all up, and they moved it, and we lived at the University Trailer Park there, just down the hill from the campus, and so that's where we spent the rest of the 5. We were there 5 years, and we spent the rest of the 4 years there, and went to the big Methodist church downtown, which was really a nice big classic church. And then later on we decided we wanted to go to a smaller church, so we went to Don Carlton's church. He was a nice young minister, had a nice wife, and it was closer to where we lived. And we spent the rest of our time in high school, college. And we were a good church. We went to church a lot. We were parts of the Wesley Foundation, and we enjoyed that. And so that's how it's spent. And then after a couple of years, I stopped working at the Department of Anthropology because I got tired of Dr. Taylor. He was a pain in the, you know what? He was bossy. He was nice enough to me, but you know he didn't know what he was doing. And he was a good professor. But and I enjoyed all the professors there and all the graduate students. It was a graduate program, you know, and I enjoyed working with all of them. And then I living at the trailer park, we met Karen and Bill Hedges, and we've been close friends ever since. And Karen had a job at the Department of Mental Health as a secretary. And so she said, there's going to be an opening, why don't you apply for that? So I did, and so I worked for that the rest of the time we were down there in Carbondale. And in an old building, and the old switchboard was the kind you see on Little House on the Prairie, you know, where they stick the things in the wall and everything. It was really an old-fashioned building. And then pretty soon they moved to a new area. Karen and I worked together there. There were 9 of us girls that worked in that office, and it was nice. It was a good experience for me. I learned a lot. Worked for blind services, worked for what was he called? The man that tried to get people to pay their expenses. When the state of Illinois, or the government, whoever it was, the federal government, I don't know who was behind that, Department of Mental Health, you know, they expected people to pay a certain percentage, you know, and that was his job, rounding up those people. I worked for him, and then I worked for the filing was such a mess. And I was always complaining about it, and so I got the job to be the file clerk there, and that was interesting. I liked it. I fixed that up, and I got rid of a bunch of old files and sent them to Springfield to be stored, and we, you know, that was it was an interesting experience. I worked for the home finder and got to go with the social worker and to go and place the babies now and then. and that was really fun to see that, and had a few people that were crazy and were dangerous, you know, in Department of Mental Health, you know, you would. But that was a very good experience. And then I spent my time while Darwin was graduating and getting his master's degree down there. I spent my time working there, and that was fun. We had a good time, a bunch of us girls. And then church, I always went to church. Mother and Dad made sure we went to church every Sunday and every Wednesday night. And there were always times when we would have youth on, sometimes during the week, and we generally have it on Sunday too. I can't remember now. We always had youth group and meetings, and we'd have big parties for the youth group. We had one year we had a really good active youth leader. She was young, and she was so talented, and she would write these poetry, these we go on treasure hunts, and at that time, you know, kids be driving, and so they'd bring their pickup trucks, and we'd all pile in the back of the pickup truck, get the first clue, and there'd be about 3 or 4 trucks that would go, and we'd go around, and you had to find where the clue was throughout the countryside. Just drive around the countryside and figure out where it was, and of course it was dark by the time we'd get very far, you know, and then we'd end up at Red Hill State Park for a big winter roast, and then she'd give prizes. She gave suckers to those who lost, and give a box of candy to the ones that won, you know. But I wish I had today some of those clues, because she'd always stick them either in a mailbox. We had to hunt the clue to begin with, and it was so cute the way it was written, and it never told us a thing. So luckily, some of the kids were familiar enough with the whole area. There were enough different ones from different parts of it that somebody could figure out where to go, and that was really fun. We'd have Halloween parties in the church basement. The youth group would, and Christmas parties. And then at Christmas time, we'd have the church would have a Christmas program. And so we would all, even when we were little bitty kids, we'd have a piece to say, you know, we'd get up and say a little poem. And we'd always sing. And then as it was older, we would put on a pageant, the older kids, and sing and put on the Christmas story, you know, and have costumes. And George Lappin, my cousin, he usually directed, and George was about 3 years older than I was, so a real good church worker. And Brenda was a year older than me, his sister, and they lived next door to my grandmother Thorne. And anyway, George would direct it, and we put on a real good Christmas show, and we always had a Christmas tree in the church sanctuary, and drew names, and in our little groups, and then it was just like in elementary school. I told you how the PTA was, you know, where all all ages of the neighborhood would come to all the PTA meetings. That's the way it was at this church. For Christmas, it wasn't. Everybody went to the Christmas show, and we always had Santa Claus. They always had one of the men in the congregation was dressed up like Santa Claus, and we'd have our program, and we'd sing, and then we'd be waiting, and they'd say, well, we think Santa Claus is gonna come, you know, and then pretty soon he'd make a lot of noise coming in the door, you know, and coming up the church steps. And then he'd hand out the gifts that had everybody's name on it. And then they always gave us a sack full of an orange and candy bars and cookies and stuff like that, suckers and stuff like that. So everybody got one of those. And my grandmother Thorne always had, you know, gifts for all of us kids, and she always gave Brenda and I Nancy Drew books, but she never gave us the same book, so that once we read it, then we'd switch, you know, and read all. She did that for years. One year she gave us all a Bible. I still have mine, And you had one too, didn't she give you one?
Not
A
sure.
a little white Bible?
Oh yeah, I
with your
remember
name on
getting
it?
a white one. Yeah.
I remember she was thinking one year when you were just a kid, she said, I'd like to give the great grandchildren something for Christmas, but she said, I don't know what to give them. And I happened to think of my Bible. I said, Grandma, you know what? I'm so fond of that little white Bible that you gave me. I said, that would make a nice gift for all of your grandchildren and great grandchildren. And that's what she did. She gave all of you kids little gifts. The boys, she gave a kind of a maroon colored gift too. The girls was the white ones. And but anyway, it was just a real fun occasion. And then the youth group would always go Christmas caroling too, and we'd go around in the countryside there to visit just the people who went to church there, you know, and sing for them. And then they always had homemade treats, you know. It was just like an old-fashioned deal, you know, and that was always lots of fun. And then. You know, I told you I played the piano for the little kids to sing downstairs, and then played for church upstairs as I got older, and did a lot of singing. I sang a lot of solos, and you want me to stop? And then we always had nice big, because there were 4 churches. We always had a nice big Bible school every summer for a week, I think, at the different churches. And our mothers would always, you know, sponsor the treats and the food and all that. And then as I got older, I started to be a helper, you know. And, we made one year. I remember we made the nicest fabric puppets of the apostles, and I wish that I still had mine. I mean, it was beautiful. We had beards on them. Everything was just beautiful, big, nice, big ones. I have no idea what happened to mine. My problem was with anything like that I had 2 little sisters, and things were played with a lot, and. So anyway, that was pretty much the way it went as far as church went. And we always, every year they'd have at church, every night of the week, they'd have what do they call that? Where they'd have a guest preacher come, and he would have a sermon every night, and we'd go and have music and extra music people and a lot of different things, you know.
What time period was this?
Well,
You said every night of the week.
it was like once a year,
Oh, okay.
and it would last for a week, you
Okay.
know. And
What was that called? Like a revival or?
yeah, revival
Okay.
meeting. Yes, that's
Got
what
it.
it was. And so, and then we always had a nice Easter service every year, and of course back then when we had Easter, we always dressed up. We got new dresses to wear, and gloves, and a little hat, and nice, pretty white shiny shoes, and things like that to wear to church. But before that, we'd always go to the sunrise service, and that was held out at Red Hill Park at the highest point in the whole area around there. They had years before that had built a cross, and then my dad was on the committee to build a new one to replace the old one, which was a neon cross. And the new one then is a white, big white, pretty cross, you know, and you can see it for miles around. And we would go out there for sunrise services and sit in the car and listen to the sermon and the singing, and we'd always take my grandmothers with us, or maybe a great aunt or two, you know, and have plenty of us in the car, and then go back to mother's and have breakfast, and then go to church. And it was always nice. We always, every Sunday, both of my grandmothers and my grandfather went to the same church I did, Fairview Church. And, you know, we usually go to my grandmother's house, one of the grandmothers. You know, it wasn't always the same grandmother, but they lived fairly close to each other, so we'd always go there and have Sunday dinner. And then sometimes Mother would have it, and they'd all come to our house too. And Mother and Dad would give all of us girls every time we'd have a birthday. Well, we usually have something special, and I remember mine being in November. It was beautiful. Daddy would always build a big bonfire out in our north lot, and we and all the family would come, you know. Now, I had an aunt and uncle that went to Pleasant Hill Church, which was a Methodist church, on our route. It was on our, you know, those kids went to youth group with us and everything too. And but they would all, my aunts and uncles would always come. And we continued doing that even after Darla and I left, I got married, and we moved away, and we, every time we'd go back home, we'd have Daddy built a fire pit in a picnic area. We called it the picnic area. It was a kind of a little corner of the woods near Mother and Dad's house that kind of stuck out a ways, and so we cleared that off when you were a baby. And I remember helping do that. That was fun.
Now, where was the north lot where you originally had the fires?
Well, you know, it was full, and now, well, I don't know what it's like now, but it was when you were around and when I was in college and everything, those were big pine trees. You remember those big pine trees? You know, Mother and Dad's house sat on, the road went in front of their house, and then to the north side of their house was a big lot, and that
so
was
facing the road, left or right?
Okay, if you face the road, it went to the right.
Where the
north.
Walnut trees and
Yes, and the big
petroleum
pine trees.
tank. Okay.
Well, no, the petroleum.
I mean,
tanks
not petroleum, but there was a big silver tank
could have been.
that was out there.
For a while, he had one out there, and he also had a little saltwater pit out there. We used to ice skate in the
Far
winter.
out there, yeah.
So
where would the fire be?
Well, you know, there's a hill. You remember the hill? Right, pretty far. It was a nice big yard, and out of ways in the yard, it was a lower place, and he always built a fire in there. And then, of course, then you had the hillside.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, that was crops.
It's still, yeah, it is all the time.
Okay.
It was even then.
Okay.
And so they would have, and we'd have a nice big bonfire and lots of food, and I always had, they always had a birthday cake for me, you know, and they'd all bring me a gift. And I'm sure they did the same thing to Linda and Gloria too. Because see, I was 5 years older than Linda and 7 years older than Gloria. And so by the time Linda got in high school, I was gone. I was in college. And so I missed all of that time with them. You know, I wasn't at home because my college, where I went to school, was a 3-hour drive from where Mother and Dad lived. And so, you know, I didn't get home that often. And it was beautiful country. All of southern Illinois is rolling hills. Just beautiful country. And the further south you got, down there by Carbondale, which is pretty far south in Illinois, where the Southern Illinois University is, which was an old school built back in the 1800s. All of those colleges, all of the old Presbyterian churches, and all of the colleges up there were all old schools. Old. I didn't even know you could have a new church until I came to Florida, and there weren't any old churches. They were all new churches. And so it just didn't hardly seem like church to me. But anyway, so I don't know what started me on that now, but
Well, if you've covered the church, we can
Yeah, and the
make that a
birthday
stopping
parties and
place.
all of the high school, and then we drive back probably every 2 weeks, or maybe once a month or more. We drive home, leave after classes on Friday, and Darwin was always, he always drove. Like I said, we usually had somebody riding with us, and we would lots of times go to, no, we'd always go to Mother and Dad's on Friday night and spend the weekend with them basically. But we would sometimes go to Darwin's dad's house and stay all night there too. But it was more uncomfortable. His house was an old-fashioned farm home. When Darwin's parents got married, his dad, Darwin's grandfather, he had 4 sons, and he gave each one of the sons 100 acres and a brand new farmhouse. Of course, that was back in the early 1900s when because they were a lot older than my mother and dad. Darwin's parents were closer to my grandparents' age, and so that Darwin's dad's house was an old farmhouse. It was a big old 2-story home. It was a nice home, and they had a big barn and a chicken house and a nice concrete block wash house, I would call it, where she put her canned goods and things, and had an orchard. And anyway, his mother died when he was 12, and by that time all of his brothers and sisters were gone, had grown, because they were so much older than he was. He was the accident, and so he lived there with his dad, and the old house just stayed an old house. Nobody, they kept it clean and everything, more or less, but nothing was remodeled in it or anything like that. In fact, it had wood heat, and it was cold in the wintertime. That house was cold, and so it was like living back in the 1800s, really. That's what Darwin always said. He said, I grew up in the 1800s, and he really did. And he went to a little country church not far, just right across the field from where he grew up. All those places are gone now. It's sad up there. But anyway, so we'd visit his dad. Sometimes we'd go there on Friday night, and his dad he used to they had a wood stove in the dining room, and he'd sit in the dining room at the table, had a big table in there, and then he'd look through the door into the living room and watch his TV that was in the living room. And he'd be sitting there rooting for he loved wrestling. and Darwin kept telling him, he said, Dad, it's just a made up thing. He said, they aren't really doing it. But anyway, I'll never forget that. That was his big deal. And then at the time that I knew him, then he was retired from farming, even though he still had some cows and pigs and chickens. I remember once he just invested in a bunch of ducks, and they were so cute when they were little. And so he wasn't really working a 9-to-5 job. He did have a job every few weeks. He'd go to Robinson, which was the county seat. I grew up in Lawrence County, and he grew up in Crawford County. And the Crawford County seat was at Robinson, Illinois. And I told you, when I was a kid, you could look north of our house, way up, and see the lights and the flare. Back then, there was a big Marathon oil, refinery at Robinson, and then there was a big, maybe it was Marathon too, a big refinery at Lawrenceville, but not as big as the one at Robinson. Anyway, we could see, Robinson was several miles away. We could see the big flare from Robinson. Of course, you could always see the one from Lawrenceville. Now, they don't have flares anymore. They make different uses of that gas. And anyway, Darwin's dad would go to Robinson, which was the county seat, and he had a job. He had had it for years. And I'm not sure just exactly what he did. he was some kind of a supervisor in his district. And he would have to go and make sure people paid their phone bills and made sure they, you know, they did everything they're supposed to do, you know. He really liked that job. He never did, Darwin's dad never did like to farm, but he was a farmer. Because his dad said he had to be a farmer. And of course Darwin's mom grew up on a farm, so, but, and this was all near Chansey, which was where Darwin grew up and went to school there in Chansey, in the little school there. It's still in use. They use it as a community building. Nice school, nice building. And it was a real small school district. Had school buses that took the kids in to school. And hi, Don. And then, but anyway, that was the way it was when Darwin grew up. And then when he graduated from grade school, he went to Bridgeport High School. That's how I met him. That's how we met.
Anything else about your church, or you think you got Fairview covered?
Pretty much, yeah. It was just a usual routine. You know, we had new dresses for Christmas, new dresses for Easter. You know, things like that. Had, like I told you about Christmas and Easter, we always had Easter baskets. And Mother's Day, they always gave the mothers a little potted plant and things like that.
Okay. All right, so we'll pick up next time then. Thank you.
Okay.